Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Moxtober Daily Recap. I'm Caillou, back with Mark Confidant and Bradley Rose, and today's day and prompt are both 13. If you don't know what Moxtober is, it's an annual event where for each day of the month of October, there's a different one-word prompt, and based on that prompt, people do various creative endeavors related to the game of Magic the Gathering. Most people make custom cards, which is what we review in these daily recaps, but people also write articles, make tools, draw art, anything creative that you can think about with relation to Magic the Gathering. As always, all of the designer credits plus collected design files for the day are going to be in the description, along with instructions on how you can submit your own cards to potentially be considered for these recaps. But with that, let's hit it. So, my first card is going to be from the MSC file, and it's going to be It That Comes to Watch. Um, this is a pretty simple design. Uh, one black for a 13/13. We've seen this before. Um, it can't block, and it gets -11/-11 unless a player has exactly 13 life. Um, so essentially, it's a powerful beater that can really close the finish line if your opponent has that exact seize amount of life. One thing, I think a minor thing I would like if this was a 1/1, because I think it's both less threatening on its own slash less easy to like chip an opponent down. Like, because if you have this plus, let's say, another two drop or one, you can go like um, turn one this, turn two two drop and a one drop, swing for two, swing for five, turn three, and then on turn and then on turn four, if you can give this some way to like get unblockable or just have some way to protect it, you can pretty much just swing in for 13. Obviously, that does take some setup, but I think that since it's a 13 life point swing, having it on a 1/1 base might be a little safer. I also like the flavor of it being -12, -12, as though like the time isn't right, because 12 is typically, since it's a number of hours thing, it's like very much associated with that. Um, but yeah, I think that like overall the flavor and mechanical concept of this are pretty sweet, um, especially
In that
considering today's theming.
in that same vein, I like it being 1/1 in part because one damage based removal is usually very incidental. It's like a random 6 minus or like a cantrip spell, an activated ability of something random. Um, and that gives you the ability to remove it while it's still a 1/1 uh, without having to have your removal necessarily be a quote unquote real card.
I wonder if y'all would be comfortable with, and I know it breaks from the parallel numbers here. If it got -11, -12, it'd be a 2/1 can't block, which would mirror some other rare creatures that are one drops that are 2/1s they can't block. Is that okay, or is that still too much?
I think I'd prefer it at 2/2 or 1/1, but I think the 2/1 thing, I think you lose some of the flavor charm and you still retain the play pattern of, oh, this can tick down my opponent's life fairly quickly. Um,
Mm.
it does help with what Mark said about the removal, but I also think that like also even in like limited formats, like shock is kind of and shock and deadweight, the -2/-2 are pretty like staple, like solid removal spells, and those are also constructed playable. One damage removal spells aren't like I think that like this threat alone won't be enough of a texture to make one damage removal spells matter. So I don't know that like moving it to one toughness just for that is worth. But
I feel like for me personally, if a developer came to me and said this needs to be -11, -12, and we've run through the numbers, I wouldn't be happy about it, but I'd be willing to put up with it if they were certain about the play pattern stuff. Because it looks a little ugly to me. It doesn't aesthetically I don't like it, but I'd be willing to put up with it.
I one thing I appreciated, it makes sense to if 1/1 is the way to go, but assuming that we kept keep it at 2/2, something that I appreciate is that this card all by itself with no other damage sources won't get you to exactly 13 life because of the evenness of the damage. It would skip over from 14 to 12. So that's like maybe sometimes an inconvenience. You're like, oh man, I can't hit them. They're at 14 with my creature. So I have to use other means in black, which is, not hard to do. But I thought that was a little neat.
Yeah, that's actually a really valid point. Um, but yeah, and I also, yeah, I just really like this. So shout out to Provocative for this design. Well, I guess, and actually, the last thing I want to say is I love the name because it's both very ominous and kind of it has that very like horror feel of like you name something by what it does. So because it doesn't have a name, but also it's incredibly silly. I like when I first saw when I read this card is like, yeah, that's me when I go when there is a movie night at my friend's place. That is me. I am it that comes to watch. Like it just feels very silly in a way that I can also appreciate. And I think you can definitely.
Mm.
I always like cards where you can reflavor them a bunch of ways with the same flavor space, and I think you could definitely do this. There's a spectrum of like very serious to very silly you can flavor this on. So that's a really minor thing.
Mm.
I just appreciated that.
Yeah.
think that kind of implies that when you go over for movie night, there are some Gremlin style rules about you not staying up till 1 a.m.,
Oh, wow.
The witching hour,
13 o'clock.
for
Yep.
sure. Okay, Mark, what is your first card for the day going to be?
My first card is from the mtg.design file. It's Looming Clock. It's 2 and a black for an artifact that taps for black. You can pay 2 and a black to put an hour counter on it. At the beginning of each upkeep, you put an hour counter on it. And when the 13th hour counter is put on Looming Clock, each opponent sacrifices all creatures they control. Exile Looming Clock. Um, so Looming Clock is a way to do 13 mechanically that's built around multiplayer, because one thing I was noticing is that it's kind of difficult to reach 13 counters or count to exactly 13 in a lot of circumstances outside of multiplayer. Where in multiplayer, you oftentimes have more room for upkeep triggers, more opportunity to get counters on things. And so I like that TheNameIsNil, the designer here, centered in on that very precisely. That was an intuition that I had as well, and I was impressed to see that here. I do kind of vaguely wish that the 2 and a black ability was add or remove, so you could politically like give an opponent another turn if you wanted to. In addition to just speeding up the clock, you can wind down the clock if you want as the controller of it.
This is a cool reference to.
Oh
I
no,
think you cut out
the
there.
the clock got him before he could finish his sentence.
Clock is ticking.
I think he was probably going to say Midnight Clock from Eldraine because it has the same. It's a mana rock that also you can put counters on it, and then it exiles. The exile clause definitely feels like it's meant to mimic that style of like, okay, it's time now.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey there.
Wow. I'm glad this is the 13th episode. I'm back. My mic cut out. This is very ominous. Yes, the Midnight Clock from Eldraine. I like that this is a dark version of that. I wish that the effect that ultimately happens was some iconic black effect, the way that Midnight Clock does Time Twister. Or no, wait, no, I'm sorry. It's a one-sided Time Twister when Midnight Clock happens. And never mind. This is great because it's a one-sided sack wrath. So good job.
I also enjoy the idea that this is a 1984 reference with the clocks are striking 13. I don't think that's the case, but that just, if it is, then that scratches an itch for me.
Sure. And now that Bradley's back from the Shadow Realm, what is your first card for the day going to be?
Yeah, knock on wood here. So let's go over to the Magic set editor file, and the card is Knights of the Lotus Order. All right. So this one is a riff on yet another a variant from casting a spell more than once. We've seen the Arrival of the Second Sun before, but this one is casting 13 of these knights. What I thought that was clever about this was the first 12 are the actual knights, and then the 13th one is the king, which is a clue from the flavor text there. And then when the king arrives, well, it's all over. You've lost the battle.
Yeah, and I love how it naturally has a relentless rats text to allow you to get it normally, but quote unquote breaking this or finding ways to like speed it up is something that I think is kind of interesting. Obviously, um, this just goes crazy with Alarin, right? If you have, uh, I don't remember if Alarin has like, oh, or I guess Cavern Harpy returns itself to your hand. I'm trying to think if there's like some other way that this goes nutty with Alarin. Um,
Uh, if this were blue or black, it would work with Cavern Harpy Ellerin. As is, it needs some sort of unsummon effect that you can repeat.
Okay,
Um,
so that's not as easy, but yeah, just other ways to like if you have repeatable bounce in like a slower game, you can definitely
Mhm.
it feels like there's probably like some unfun play patterns where if they do have like a crystal shard type thing and then you point removal at it, they bounce it, so it's harder to interact with. But I think that it's one of those things where like if the format is slow enough where you can afford to play Crystal Shard Knights of the Lotus Order, it's also probably multiplayer, in which case you can make yourself arch enemy by having to uh, kind of telegraph like the here comes the cavalry. So yeah, overall I'm a big fan of this design. So shout out to Jayhew for making it.
um,
Mm.
one question: is there some sort of uh like knights theme in some way with the number 13 that I didn't know about? Is it like a Knights of the Round Table thing? Because I want to say there are a couple cards that do stuff with like knights and a king.
Yeah, I think was it King Arthur had 12 knights of the Round Table. I think
Ah,
that's a thing.
yeah.
Forgive me, Arthurian legend experts, if I got the number of knights wrong, but I think that's right.
A quick Google says it ranges from 12 to more than 150. So there's and it also says there's like eight iconic ones. So it seems like depending on which kind of version of the tale you subscribe to,
Mm.
which yeah, I definitely saw there was another like there was a card which like made night tokens, and then if you had 13, you destroy all of their permanents or something. And so yeah, I was like, nah, yeah, did cards like find their way into this file accidentally? But it doesn't seem to be the case.
Huh. Very cool.
Okay, so for my next card, let me pull up my list. Uh, let's go to from the MSC file Hotel Haunt, designed by Zarepath. So this is pretty simple. It's one white and a black flying lifelink. You secretly choose a number when it enters the battlefield, and then if a player's life total is equal to the chosen number, reveal that number and return Hotel Haunt from your graveyard to the battlefield. Really seeing like a through line with my choices here. All stuff that care about players' life totals. But I think that like it's one of the things which is usually like I think something that you track only in terms of like higher number, lower number, or if it's like a bolt or lava spike format. Are they? Am I at like 7 life or higher? But otherwise, this is just like I just love the idea of like secretly choosing stuff in black border. It's a really fun thing for like there's a few riffs on this, but like the 13th floor of the hotel, which is like a common like urban legend slash urban fantasy thing of like the a secret floor that was never built that houses all the scary stuff in a hotel. Um, and I like that you can if you get multiple copies of this, you can essentially play it, set the floor to what you want it to be, and then on your opponent's upkeep, you can recur other copies of itself. So, yeah.
So for the graveyard recursion text, is it supposed to be return a card named Hotel Haunt from your graveyard to the battlefield? Or
Oh
like
yeah.
yeah, it's a little bit fiddly there with like return this card or return a card named Hotel Haunt, or does this like is the number tied to this specific instance of Hotel Haunt? I assume it's just you recur this from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then if you have other copies of it, they recur too, because that's how things have usually worked in Magic.
For
I
sure.
do like the idea of getting good coverage by like you play one Hotel Haunt, you play another, maybe you mill a third, and they all end up in the bin eventually, and then your opponent's like, well, what are the two numbers that have been chosen rather than just the one?
Uh,
Yeah,
I
and it
think it
doesn't
would be
exactly do
the
like very dredgy things, even though it's recurring, because like it requires you to like you can't like proactively enable this consistently. At least not without putting cards in whatever engine you're using that probably are like more janky or less efficient.
Yeah, it does like ever so slightly a little bit, but much more in the like much more likely to be in the fair case where you at least once play a Hotel Haunt fair. Um, I do also like there's this kind of like the board game Clue sort of element to trying your opponent trying to infer what the secretly chosen number was, where it's like, okay, well, what was I at when Hotel Hunt came down? What did they expect to be able to hit me to? What numbers have I seen that it's not? And then from there, you're trying to like avoid hitting the number. You're trying to do like almost backwards battleship where you don't want to hit the number that they have secretly put there.
Yeah, definitely.
I on the templating note, I think it has to be if a player's life total is equal to a chosen number, a number chosen for a card name, a card you control name or whatever own name hotel
Would it
haunt
be
because
easier if you just made a legend if it was just legendary, and then so that way it's like, no, probably not, because then you can still get multiple copies. Ugh, blah.
uh,
I
yeah, because they're separate objects once they're in the graveyard and in the battlefield, so it would the chosen number becomes different. Yeah.
would it be better if you just said like um if a player's life total is equal to a secretly chosen number you've chosen or something? Even that's like a little bit fiddly.
Oh man. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Secret number tribal.
so like obviously there's like some templating squiffiness on this as far as stuff goes. I feel like there is a reachable, relatively clean templating thing to this. We could iterate, but I don't know that we would necessarily hit the perfect thing so much as like agonize over the fiddliness of kind of inherent to trying to get the perfect template here.
Yeah, yeah. It, yeah, just the functionality might actually change just out of necessity because of the. But like how you said, legendary could restrict it to one. Um, I love the life link here, giving like an extra tension to how you're going quote unquote up and down the elevator, trying to hit the cursed floor. I think that's very clever.
That is something I didn't notice. I didn't notice that you could also be at that life total, and the life link facilitates that. So that is definitely a cool
Mm.
mechanical note there.
See, I was thinking if you're the beatdown, there's this anxiety to like taking yourself off of being in the range from 1 to 15 where you can get Hotel Haunt back.
That's fair. You've got the Icarus elevator car going too close to the sun. Mm.
Yeah, the Willy Wonka we're up in the ceiling elevator car.
Oh, also bonus points for uh, finding a number range that actually fits believably organically to real life. I believe there would be hotels that have 15 floors. Uh, it doesn't feel arbitrary to choose that number. That seems like a decent sized hotel that exists.
Yeah, for sure. Also, you should definitely yoink this art for Castmire. I'm just saying. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, Mark, what is your next card?
Let's see here. I'm gonna go with Izna, Drowner of Luck from the Magic Set Editor file. It's a 1, a green, and a blue for a 1/3. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have fewer than 13 cards in your graveyard, each player mills 3 cards. It has tap for each player, put up to one target card in that player's graveyard on the bottom of their library. So it seems like this is intending to be kind of a graveyard focused commander, but one that allows you to kind of group hug mill, but you get to control the ceiling on that group hug mill. I just like the pieces that are going on here as far as things go. It seems like it could do some useful things with like escape or flashback or whatnot. And it seems like something that I wouldn't personally mind building a commander around or seeing across the table. I'm not sure what the fully optimized version of that would look like, but I feel like I don't know, just the rules text on this looks nice. I just like it because it's nice.
It's just neat. Yeah. It's one of those things where like I like the idea of like it gives you a small way to solve its thing of like having less than 13 cards. Um, but eventually you're going to kind of overmill, so it encourages you to be like, hey, add additional synergies over and on top of this. And I like the call out for escape because that's definitely a really good way to use this. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, this designer and several others have used 1-3 as a stat line in order to represent 13, and I enjoy it when I see that.
Ooh, I missed that. That is actually really clever. So yeah, shout out to LuckyLooter for this design.
Oh, another. I guess I see another little Easter egg is apparently on this render. This is card 13 out of 31. Oh wait, no, never mind. That's the day.
That's
Ah.
the.
That's the yeah. Never mind. I'm just
Um,
doing repeating Jim Carrey, seeing too many numbers everywhere.
23.
I still haven't seen that movie, but I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? Oh, I really like what you pointed out there, Caillou, of there's been this critique of a lot of commanders lately about them being self-perpetuating, like both engine and payoff. And I like the idea of having like um an engine that you can keep going, but only a little bit. So like your way of keeping the engine going is kind of clamped down by the rate on doing it being not awesome.
Yeah, it's like I guess like the cards like that. I guess like they kind of like let the way I describe it is they let players have their cake and eat them too. And here it's like you can have a little nibble. You can definitely have a little nibble. You can take the raspberries off the top, maybe shave some buttercream off the side. But if you want the full thing, you're gonna have to definitely cough up some cash here. So I definitely agree with that because you want players to feel like supported and like their cards are doing work for them, but you also don't want to do that at the expense of uh, making interesting choices in deck building.
Yeah, you want to make sure that like whatever strategy you're doing, you aren't just creating something that is guaranteed best on rate. The only way to make another general for that is to create something that is competing in the sphere of rate. You want to have something that has like a narrow way that it constructs its engine that incentivizes you towards doing specific things, but doesn't just eat up the design space of being like, well, I'm the guy who's the blink commander, or I'm the guy who's the morbid commander. Um, you've got a
Cough, Tulane, cough.
yeah, that was a subtweet, a verbal subtweet on my part there.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot interesting to have just one piece of the puzzle.
Mhm. Okay, next up, Bradley. What is your next card?
Okay, head on over to mtg.design. In this file, there is serial killing. All right, so uh this is a number carrying board wipe here. I think it's a little cheaper than I would like for what would feel like usually a one-sided wipe. It depends on if it's in a limited environment or if it's a commander only card. But there is to compare. It can kill any number of tokens for sure. So Aether Snap exists at 3 black. So that's cool that it costs at least one more, but maybe 7 would be cool. But I really like that 13 is usually like, oh, bad luck, that's terrible. And then serial killing is also, oh, that's terrible and bad. And serial is also a numbery thing. Count your deaths. So very cool package.
Yeah, I think it's also a little interesting how this ends up being like not as good in like traditional battle cruiser magic. If people are just like curving out, you can definitely like board wipe like one player and that can be a field spad. But to make this like everyone else loses their board, suddenly it's like, oh man, that green player over there is sitting there with a 4 drop, a 5 drop, and a 6 drop. And I'm counting on my fingers like I can take out 2 creatures with my 6 mana removal, with my 6 mana board wipe. Hold on. So I definitely agree with the tokens thing. That seems a little much, but I think that uh, usually if there are like good incentives to like play fat Timmy creatures, this card becomes a little bit sadder, or sadder in the
I
sense
have.
like
Mm,
not that it's bad, but I think that like it's the potential like one-sided board wipe aspects have like a lot more play at that point.
I think that there's a pretty clean fix here for the cases that Bradley was talking about. I think you just give this card the hex treatment. You just strip off or less.
Okay, wait. Speaking of hex, did y'all see was it Triskaidekaphobia in the file? Um or is it no Trisk no, sorry, that's the cannon card. Triskay Triskaidekacide, uh which is just hex but destroy 13 target creatures. Um
yes. Yeah.
and
Right next
like
to it.
yeah, the serial killing and Trisk I was like, these are both so great and I love that they ended up next to each other in the file.
Yeah, in serial order. Marcus, your suggestion is, yeah, that would put it to be like, oh, now I can bump the mana value lower. Even it's like you can't kill all tokens. You need a little more help if you got to do exactly 13, which sounds fun.
Yeah, it would often end up, I think, in limited at that point being like, um, kill your opponent's two best creatures and one of your own, in order to get the numbers right. But your own would probably be small. It would still be a very, very good card in limited, I think, where Hex was kind of, and I didn't play original Ravnica, so I could be wrong on this, but I'm guessing Hex was kind of like a bit of a reach to achieve. Um, but
Mm,
yeah, so like, but if
maybe.
you get to the point in the game where your opponent has like 13 mana value exactly worth of creatures, um, then this ends up just like closing out what is likely a stalled game. And that's not the worst place to be at. That's like sometimes it sucks to get kind of stomped on by an overrun, but overruns should probably exist to close out those games, even if it is a stomp.
Yeah. There there might have been sapperling tokens to help smooth out the targets for Hex and original Ravnica.
Hmm.
uh, which is a cool tool to keep in mind for anything like this Triskaidekacide, this other one. uh,
But yeah, shout out to CyberFive for serial killing and HAzor for Triskaidekacide. God, these are
well done.
it really made these a mouthful, huh?
Yeah, they're very Asmarana card card. I
Let's
almost got it.
go. I think that you got it in my heart. There was a little
Asmar
stumble.
Mardika Dyson to Kuldakar.
I
Whew,
lose momentum about halfway
Bradley.
through and then pick it up at the end. But like the middle is just this weird liminal space where they can just put letters and get away with whatever they want.
Yeah,
I just love the
yeah,
concept of that. Just like have a name long enough that the Fae just put letters in and out of it.
Just as Miranda Yomi $5 Kuldakar.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Yomi. It's a good card game.
I wish I had a good transition to my next card from either of those, but unfortunately I don't. So we're just going to be moving on to in the MSC file. There's two cards which touch on this flavor, and I'll briefly mention the other. But first we're going to go to Angeline the Baker. Um, Pretty simple planeswalker from iemcd here. +2 untap target permanent. You can exile a card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control and you gain 1 life. And then -13, you gain 39 life. Um, and the reference here is a baker's dozen, which is such a cool way to take this prompt, and I never would have thought of that. I kind of do wish it did like I think there are definitely times where I feel like having mechanics that have like very defined flavor, like food or like treasure, can sometimes stifle design space by making people like jump on them as the only way to do expressions around that. But I think that food would honestly have been kind of fine here. I could see like create you could like make a food token or like a food adjacent token that uh, you need some mana for, so you have the untap target permanent like has some more relevance. Um, but yeah, like I think like I like the overall flavor concept of this, and I love the ultimate. Um, I just think that the first two abilities are they're fine, but I think that they're pretty like yes, this is green, and they don't like synergize with each other. So I think they could definitely be adjusted for a little bit more of that. And the other card I was calling out, just as a quick thing, was where is it here?
The
Um,
Generous Baker, I think.
oh, it's the Generous Baker. Yeah, I was looking for Generous. Yeah, it's the Generous Baker by Angel of Grace, which is just a simple food bear.
Yeah,
Um,
This this one, the generous baker, this one made me feel emotions with reading the flavor text. And of course, a reference again to the baker's dozen. But yeah, giving an extra bun to a mom that might need a bit more food for their children.
yeah, especially again, I say this every episode. It's spooky month. We expect things to be kind of grim and edgy, and when they aren't, it's kind of a welcome respite from that. So
Mm.
one thing I will say about Angeline the Baker is you can feel blasé about her first ability, her +2. I think the other two abilities are perfect because for me, the +1, I'm fairly certain that's top down for bake a creature into a meat pie and feed it to your creature and you.
Yeah.
oh, okay, that's
I
fair.
saw Ian make a reference to the scavenging ooze in the Discord. Managed to catch that note. So I guess scavenging, right, implies yeah, you're eating the creature. So yeah, uh, that's a nice reference there.
That is
Angeline,
mwah,
what you
chef
doing?
kiss.
Ah, yes, yes.
But yeah, Mark, what is your next card?
Uh, let's see here. If I can find where it is in the file, I'm scrolling and I'm bad at scrolling. Horror of the Deep on MTG.design. It's 3 and a blue for a 13/13 with trample. It enters the battlefield with 13 ice counters on it. It can attack or block as long as it has one or more ice counter on it. And if a permanent you control would untap, you may instead remove an ice counter from Horror of the Deep. So I just really enjoy the sort of suspend flavor here because that's often a motif of ice things. And then the way of like, rather than you suspend on your own, you kind of invest excess mana from your tapped lands into Horror of the Deep, or from your tapped creatures if you like swing in and you just want to leave a creature tapped because it doesn't affect combat at all, and it would just get blocked if it swung in again and wouldn't be a meaningful blocker. And also there's like a keen eye here to the rate on suspending this because it's like functionally this is a 17 mana 13/13, but it has an installment plan and it's a very good installment plan. It's a lot of installments, but it's like you can have on turn, what is it, 9, no 8, a 13/13 ready to hit face if you just leave your lands tapped.
If you just time walk yourself a bit, yeah.
I'm on the bit, yeah.
But yeah, I like the overall concept, and I think that the if a permanent you control it untap, you may instead remove an ice counter from Horror of the Deep is like inspired. I don't know if there's like a canon card that's pulling reference from. I know the rest is very what do you call it, Dark Depths, and Thing in the Ice, but that line really sold me on the flavor of this. Um, and yeah, I also like that it's naturally a 13/13, unlike Thing in the Ice, which has to flip, and obviously Dark Depths, which you have to Vampire Hex Mage or otherwise cheat out. Um, Here, since it's already a 13/13, you can probably use that power and toughness to do some fun stuff, even if you can't attack or block with it. Like,
Yeah.
there's the obvious of a fling, but there's probably other cool stuff that you can do. But at 4 mana, it's not at a cost where like that kind of alternate use case is something that's like worrisome. It's just like, oh yeah, cool. Um, I almost feel like this could maybe be 3 mana, so you can start pumping it up a little faster. But maybe that's just me. But overall,
I feel
yeah,
like
this was also on my list. I love the concept. Shout out to Go Mate for this design.
at 3, I start being more afraid of the fling case than at 4. Either way, like 2 cards that are specifically synergistic for just make your opponent a bit more than half dead isn't the worst thing in the world. Especially because like they're both, well, one of them is a card that's just straight up dead in an aggro plane, most likely.
I like Caillou when you mentioned the just time walk yourself for this that you could do. If you play one extra land while if you just go all in and just tap the rest, then that will take the third turn after you play this, which is actually reminiscent of Eater of Days, another Leviathan, which has you time walk yourself 2 turns. So it feels kind of a nice, uh, like another style of that if you want to. You don't have to, which is cool. It's flexible. It sucks when I can't play my Eater of Days because I know I'm gonna die. But this one lets me, if I want to go for it, I could.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not like a. This is much more of a Kickstarter than like an Indiegogo. There's no flexible funding. That you need to remove all 13 counters, or it's not gonna budge.
There you
Um,
go.
but yeah, yeah, and I like that it's permanent and not just lands. Obviously, the easiest way to accumulate tapped permanents is your lands, but I could definitely see like you play this in like I can like they're definitely like maybe not anymore because we have like a lot higher powered environments these days. But like I can definitely see like a time where like, this is like a weird mirror breaker where you have like tokens and then you just have like a bunch of horror of the deep sitting it out. Like yeah, I can't really win this matchup until I get my big 13/13 trampler on the board. So I'm just gonna keep my tokens tapped and ready to beef up.
Mm.
So if you want a spicy use case for the like convoke strategy, you can chump attack with like a couple tutus into their big stuff on the expectation that you'll get through in order to cheat this out like a turn earlier.
Okay.
Ooh.
Deep strategies.
Oh god, I just realized that's a pun on horrors of the deep. Ah.
Hey, hey, hey.
Okay, what's your next card going to be, Bradley?
Well, let's go over to the Magic Set Editor file. And this one is called Moirai Gwyllions. All right, so this one is a card from the Project Jumpstart by Juliet, which assumes every packet's card is both multicolor, but you only have to pay hybrid. Just keep that in mind for the color identity of this. Okay, so I like that you have a scry total number to try to shoot for as the concept of this for winning for an alternate, or I guess alternate loss condition. uh Having it be off of your life total feels like very dangerous outside of that environment, but maybe it's really hard to do in this limited environment, which is cool. But my lesson from here is I want to see this even in just like regular black border magic, even if you base it off of maybe another player's life total or some other number and just have scry reach that threshold.
Yeah, I think your own life, it's maybe might be a little bit too easy to just like pay life into this and then be like, cool. Unless you literally have lava spike, if you're playing like normal thing, like you need an evasive creature or a lava spike to get me. Otherwise I'll just chump with my thing and then immediately win because I'll scry greater than my life total. Um, Yeah, so I think some other value might be interesting, but like it's not a huge deal. And I like the aspirational quality of it for limited. This is definitely, ooh, okay, I'm gonna go all in on this first pick.
Do you think
Mm-hmm.
Or like
maybe it should be,
I guess Jumpstart you don't get picks, but you know what I mean. The
yeah, yeah. Do you
Yep.
think upkeep? Sorry, I'm really stepping on folks' toes here. Upkeep and if you scried more since your last turn, since then like greater than your life total would be a better way to do it.
Oh wait, I
Because like
also just realized that this doesn't actually allow the use case I mentioned earlier because like it doesn't trigger an opponent's end step, so you can't just block and then win. But you have to like proactively
Uh,
enable it. Okay, that makes it a lot more reasonable.
well, you could still just like let yourself get whittled down to like 2 on their turn. On your turn, like slam jam this down, let one of your creatures die in some fashion, and then scry 2 win the game.
oh, it's got to be greater than, so 1 life. But yeah, I get it.
Scry 4 or something like that. But so there's this thing where like are you guys familiar with, I want to say it was Patrick Chapin talked about the idea of Titans, Muldrifters, and Baneslayer Angels?
Yes, I
Uh,
remember this coming up. I don't remember the original like I never listened to the original thing, but I remember it coming up heavily with refer when Elder Gargaroth was coming out and stuff. And it's like these days even Baneslayers might not make the cut in standard because they don't generate ETB value in the same way. But yeah.
Yeah. So
mhm.
like there's this separate sort of question as to whether a thing is a Baneslayer or like a Titan. For reference for anyone listening, a Baneslayer is a card that will like give you dramatic advantage if you get a turn cycle of it existing. But on its own, it's like a lot of risk to put it out because if a removal spell trades with it, they're probably up on mana or tempo or like have blown you out for like putting your queen onto the table where it can be removed. By contrast, a Titan gets you value immediately and compounding value. So you are getting ahead even if your opponent removes it. You're just like, that's just the play, and it will compound your advantage just for having reached the mana where you're capable of playing it. Um, but there's this separate question where, like, is a haste creature a Titan or a Baneslayer? Because it doesn't literally have an ETB, but it does have like a much shortened timing window in which to interact with it. Is a creature that triggers on end step a Titan or a Baneslayer? Starts to get ambiguous. There's this like kind of shrug there. Like I forget what the one was, but there was a creature that manifested on your end step. Um, like a green creature that did it.
Whisperwood Elemental. It's 5 mana manifest every end step. That one.
Yeah, that one. And you could make the argument, for example, that that's a Titan, just because they were unlikely to be able to interact with it immediately. Um,
Yeah, it feels like we need probably like a fourth category here. Don't know what you'd call it,
yeah,
but it's basically just stuff that doesn't generate value immediately, but if your opponent doesn't have instant speed interaction, will do something before they untap.
yeah.
This is
Um,
half a Titan because you get the benefit when it dies, but if they exile it or fly over, you don't get it. There you
yeah.
go. A little giant.
Oh, okay. Um, so proposal. Now that I think it's getting back to my card, right?
Yep.
Okay. So proposal. We make this the last round. We go through one more time, and then Mark talks about his cards. That way, we will have had 13 rounds, though not 13 exact cards, and then we can end off this episode with a flavor win like that.
Sounds
Amazing.
good to me.
Wow.
Word. The okay.
Let us tempt fate.
Um, and for my last card, ooh, this is hard. There's two cards in MTG.design that are like I want to talk about one, but then briefly reference the other. So it's going to be Victor, or oh, does it not show up here? Oh, it looks like whoever did Victor did not do artist credit. So never mind. We're ignoring Victor the Fright Caller and going to 13 the Unlucky. So made my choice easy. So this is black, red, and green X. It enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So don't get fooled. It's not. It's 3 mana on its base. You add a colorless for each +1/+1 counter on 13. Uses only to pay costs that contain X. And whenever you cast a spell with mana value 13 or more, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And Victor was kind of similar in that it essentially let you pay more mana. It let you pay X into your instant and sorcery spells, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 13 or greater, or sorry, whenever you spent 13 or more mana to cast an instant or sorcery, you copied it 3 times. So yeah, I'm always a big fan. I prefer this one slightly more as well because like I love X spells. Roshin Meander is one of my like old favorite commander decks, and I think that there's a lot of stuff going on here that all connects to 13, but doesn't feel incredibly clunky in its implementation. It feels more functional, and the reference to 13 is kind of just like, hey, this is your big mana threshold for doing the thing. So it just comes together nicely. Um, yeah, so I don't know that I have much more to say about this. Also, I love the idea of like 13 being unlucky, so you have a black cat here. So,
I
Yeah.
I vaguely worry about this having that kind of like sort of prush style to it where your opponent has to like remove it continually in order to keep you from just being able to do something bonkers. And then you being able to have a good to fair chance of replaying it every turn when it's removed. Um, I'm not positive that that would be the play pattern, just because unlike Prosh, this doesn't give you anything left behind in order to guarantee bringing it back. Um, yeah, in general I like the idea of copying big X spells, especially like taking this and making like a giant walking ballista or something seems sweet.
Torment of Hailfire is my personal favorite for sure. And
That's a
this lets
nice
me run it
addition.
because you don't get to run that in traditional Roshin Meanderer. So,
Which is a
Yeah.
tragedy.
Yeah. That's a nice opening of that. I want to see more color identities for each of our different niche commanders.
yeah, this is one of those times where it's like, yes, I will accept expanding the space of, or like the engine value of this archetype and commander because it lets me do more cool stuff. But yeah, shout out to jerpeggy for this design. Um, so, Mark, what is going to be your last of other people's design?
I really like Rebellious Teen in the Magic Set editor file. So it's is it colors? It's a 3/2. You can tap it and tap 3 untapped creatures you control to gain control of target artifact, or you can pay 3 white to shuffle it and target legendary creature into their owner's library. Um, I just really like using Teen here. It's probably the most novel take on Teen that I've seen, and I like the just the top downness of like a gaggle of teens like stealing something from a supermarket, or um a teen like screwing up badly in some sort of like fantasy novel and managing to mess stuff up enough that their like mentor figure and them both get really badly screwed over.
Not gonna lie, it just hit me that's what I was like. Well, I don't get how this is related to 13. Maybe it's a reference to like some novel I don't know. And then you said teen, and I'm like, oh my god. And also ancestral was like, it would mention something about like you guys just did teen it up later, and I'm like, what? I don't get it. And now I'm like, oh, duh.
Dang
But
those teenagers.
yeah, now that I get that it's like a top-down teenager card, I kind of love this. It's like like Fantasy City Rapscallion vibes. So yeah, big fan.
Yeah, I agree that this feels like this is a ding dang punk here. Uh, I like that both the flavorful three. So you got to have this and 3 other untapped creatures. That's like a hefty cost. It's not easy to do. And but it also tells a story that it requires coordination with other people, maybe distracting others, and yeah.
Yeah, the off-color activated ability. There's a lot of pieces here that, and I wish I could talk to Astrid with a B about them. This is definitely one of those cards where I would love to like hop on and get context that way. Yeah.
I wonder whether Astrid with a B would be like cool with coming on, because I could see them being a guest. They've made some really just crushing it cards.
for sure. And yeah, and we're definitely like open to guest speakers. Like we've been doing it on invite generally, but that's mostly just because we don't want to bother random people. But if you're interested in coming on, this is just kind of like formal invitation. Message me, Bradley, Mark, or Ancestral. We're kind of like the core team right now, but we're always willing to have more people on. So yeah. Um, I guess with that little soapbox out of the way, Bradley, what is your last card of the day going to be?
Okay, let's go to mtg.design. Let's go and talk about the Triskaidekaskelion. Uh, so this is a commander that's colorless, which is very cool and exciting to see because there's very few of those. A lot of those are Eldrazi Titans, so it's nice to see some variety besides the one Dominaria one that cares about historic. I thought this, obviously, it's a reference to our beloved Triskelion card, but with 13 instead. I like that it picks the +1/+1 counter space because there are a whole lot of different artifact creatures that like to have +1/+1 counters. There's modular, there's also the cogwork cycle. Um, yeah, so that's a very popular thing to do with artifact creatures, and that's a nice slice that you can go for when building a commander deck. Uh, yeah, I think it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
I
I
think
think
that
that
there's
a Triskelion in the command zone could definitely like in a high-powered environment pose some problems. But I love the idea of this just like coming down, wham bam, destroy everything. Thank you, ma'am. Um, it's very splashy in a way that I think is fun, and I think that lots of times colorless commanders suffer because they're either Eldrazi Titans, and so you have a very specific way of building them, or they just are like artifacts.deck. And I love that this is sure you can build artifacts with it. It's an artifact creature itself. You have modular that plays around with +1/+1 counter space, but it also encourages you to kind of have a unique team of its own that isn't just play artifacts or play devoid.
I like that the top line is self-controlled enough to have it be just one less to cast for each creature you control, rather than the total number of +1/+1 counters that you have, because that seems a lot more likely to get problematic quickly. There's probably some sort of combo thing you can do that would like let you sack it and get enough counters to be able to recast it from the command zone or something like that. Um, where by contrast, that's a lot harder of a hoop to jump through with only caring about one counter per creature. Um, and I also like that this is a +1/+1 counters matter commander that is in a quote unquote color combination or lack thereof, I suppose, that doesn't really have a lot of +1/+1 counter matter pieces. It offers like a compelling Johnny challenge at the same time as like giving nice toys to probably the most dejected color combination in Commander. Um, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm waiting for that precon for a colorless commander deck sometime. I imagine I think it would be really cool if they sometime do five color one and a colorless one pair of decks someday. But yeah, it's been a number of years, over a decade, and we haven't seen a colorless one. I know it's really hard to do, yet the like basic wastes are probably like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed
I
that
would
there
throw.
hasn't been one actually.
I know that Astimagion is doing custom commanders a day plus deck lists for them. Out of the deck lists are
Yeah.
with canon cards. The commanders are custom, so I might just shoot this their way and be like, hey, you want to make a custom commander for colorless? Because I'm sure that would be something cool for them to riff on.
Yep.
Okay, and with that, our 13th and last slot of the day, though not exactly the 13th card, but we're just going to have to live with that. It's going to be Mark talking about the mechanic that he designed for today. What is that mechanic, Mark?
So for today, the mechanic is doomed. It's a how do I put this? It's like Monarch in that it's like a trait that you can just get and have. But it rather than being something that you're trying to grab like a king of the hill, it's more like a hot potato thing. So the doomed like emblem or whatever you want to call it, the reminder card for it says at the beginning of each upkeep, you get a doom counter. Then, if you have 13 or more doom counters, you lose the game. And whenever you attack an opponent or an opponent attacks you, if an attacker is unblocked, that opponent becomes doomed. And you're no longer doomed when that happens. So it passes around. Um, the example card I think I want to highlight most is probably Hubristic Rage. It's one in a red for an aura. Enchanted creature attacks each turn if able, and attacks a player with untapped creatures if able. When enchanted creature dies, its controller becomes doomed. So it's a way to like force a creature to chump attack in, and if your opponent wants to, they can make the creature die in combat and add doom onto stuff. The thought process here, as far as doom goes, was trying to create something that's like realistically going to pass around, has a relatively short timing window, so you feel threatened and want to get it off of you because it only takes a little over 3 turn cycles for being doomed to kill you. And then also, while it might end up on a player who's like a little bit behind for longer spans of time, disincentivizes attacking that player who's a little bit behind. So you don't want to hit the person who's doomed because if you hit the person who's doomed, then you get it. And maybe you can take those counters, maybe you can't.
Yeah, I love the description of it as hot potato because that's really what it feels like. It feels like, um, it also feels like, I don't know why this came to mind, but if you've read Diary of a Wimpy Kid, there's like the cheese touch. It just feels like
Yeah.
that where you pass it around, where it's like you don't want to touch that person or get touched by them, otherwise you get it. Um, yeah, and it's just I saw you like iterate on this in the Discord, and I love the place that it finally landed on. It feels like the play pattern could have been something that wasn't very compelling, but the ability to both proactively pass it along to someone while also be it being something that if you want to, you can hold on to like disincentivize attacks or like buy yourself some breathing room. Super cool. I love like the design space you've showcased across. What is the card which is like can't be blocked if you're doomed or if it's attacking a doomed opponent?
Yeah, harassing haunts.
Harassing Hans, that's the one. Um, so yeah, I love like this the card set that you've made. There's also what is the sign in blood that made you doomed? What was that?
Seal your fate. Black, black for a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, you become doomed.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just think that like you've really showcased the design space and different ways that you can turn this into incentive, disincentive, gamble. So yeah, I think that it's hard to find mechanics that are genuinely compelling and encourage aggressive gameplay in multiplayer. This one does it. I would love to see like a conspiracy style set built around Doomed. I think it might actually be. I'm trying to think back and see if there's anything else, but it might be my favorite mechanic to come out of the month so far. So big, big, big kudos, at least in my corner.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
That's pretty bold. You're trading. I like the seal your fate. I saw that and I was like, okay, so this is sign in blood, but it trades the 2 life for the doom, gaining doom. So that's the value of the punishment of a doom is maybe around 2 life. But also, if this appears in a multiplayer product, life is a lot more minuscule, uh, less of a worry there. So maybe doomed is valued differently there. I like using taking a doom as a payment for things, and I want to see that more. So one thing I looking at the you made a doomed reminder card here, which is very helpful. So if you're doomed and your opponent wants to hit you, then that's a risk they're taking, right? And I wonder if that would ever cause opponents to be like, you know what, I would like to wall up and let you get doomed till you die, and maybe that's something that you're shooting for.
A little bit, yeah. Like basically, ideally, being doomed would have a little bit of like a propaganda effect style to it. Um, Although more like they don't want to attack you with one creature. if they want to attack you, they want to attack you with like an alpha strike. So you might end up in this situation where like a player has like 12 doom counters, so they just can't touch whoever's doomed. And then they're like, well, I need to suit up and get a big enough army that if the last player alive is doomed, I can still just alpha strike in after that.
Hmm. Oh, you keep the doom counters, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Okay, that's great. You don't have to reset. Like infect.
Yeah, it's a persistent counter on you. I was actually considering the idea of having a black creature, like a 0/4 or something like that, that its power is equal to the number of doom counters you have, and when it enters, you become doomed.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, I like the idea of like some of these you become doomed cards. Like it's like you become doomed. If you're already doomed, you get a doom counter or something like that. Um,
Ooh,
so there's a little bit more stake there, and you can also it also plays into Black's natural like when you mentioned like this thing's power is equal to your doom counters. I like the idea of like uh, there's like the Sui Black archetype where it's like I'm gonna push my life total down real low, but you're coming down with me. So that kind of vibe translating into Doom feels really cool. Um, yeah, and like I feel like it's most people when they design Monarch mechanics, Monarch adjacent, um, they kind of pick up on the wrong aspects of it or just make it too similar to Monarch. Whereas this, I think it has enough of a similarity to the successes of Monarch, where it's that it creates like a struggle around a resource that defines the game and defines the environment, but does so in a way where you can proactively or reactively get yourself like interact with it, quote unquote. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm just repeating myself. Mechanic good. Okay, and with that, we're just over the hour mark. Yay! I thought that limiting it to exactly 13 go arounds would be a little under an hour, but we got there. So nice. Um, and as always, all of the designer credits for the cards we talked about today are in the description, as well as instructions for how you can get your own cards into the file, and the full mtg.design and MSE set files that we pulled the small selection of cards from. Um, Thanks to Cajun and Ancestral for setting up the MSE and mtg.design collection files in general. Um, and I think other than that, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for watching, everyone.